Hi guys, this is Annette with Annette's Astrology Corner, and I just wanted to shoot a quick video. Something came up this morning and it just lit a fire in me. And I'm a very vocal person, and I like to discuss things and talk about things, and you know, like, I just didn't want to, I wanted to think about this video before I started it, because I just think this time in our lives are when we are struggling with the transition between Chiron in Pisces going into Aries energy. These 2 weeks especially. One of the things that came up for me was the fact that, oh my gosh, you guys might be able to see these cute little ducks come out of the water. Let's see. Come here, little ducky. Sorry, you know, I'm in such a nature net. Look at him for a while. Oh my gosh, so dang cute. I can't even deal. Okay. And one of the things that you may get wrapped up in, and I wondered why it was brought to my attention. So I feel like I get messages and signs energetically, and the way that I often get them is through media, because I have a Gemini Rising. So if you know anything about Geminis rule media, like they rule communication. And so excuse me, so it doesn't surprise me that I had, you know, a message through media again. And I watched this guy's channel. I've been watching it for about a year. And the reason why I watch different perspectives is because I want to develop the best version of myself right now, because we've been talking a lot how we're all doing this work where we're identifying areas in our lives that we need to change, and we're moving forward with hopefully making changes in those areas. If you guys have if you guys are doing the energetic work that you should be during this time frame. And although what has come up is some of the areas where we're most vulnerable, our most sensitive spots, right? And when we face those things energetically, they can be just very hard to realize, right, about ourselves. So yes, collectively we need to come together at some point. I don't feel like that is right now. I feel like what we need to do is identify ourselves, all of our strengths, all our weaknesses, the position that we are taking on those areas in our life right now. And we are trying to develop the best version of ourselves, that true sense of self. And that work is very difficult, especially when you transition out of Pisces work. And Pisces work is all that work where we have to really face things, and we have to remove the illusion that we have created in certain areas of our lives. And we have to face the reality of those situations, and then we have to make powerful changes. The one thing I want to emphasize in this particular video is the category that we place things in called all. Right now, when we're trying to identify things in our lives, the category of all can be very seductive, because then that takes the blame off of you, right? If we can categorize everything as everybody else in our life, or if we can categorize everything as the economy, or if we can categorize everything as you know, our social limitations, our societal limitations, or if we can categorize ourselves as our gender restrictions, then we will stay stuck in the area of our life that we are trying to change, that we are the energy is forcing you to take a look at. And the word all is a button for me. And so for the first time in my life, I made a negative comment on a video of somebody with the opposite perspective. Now understand, facing the opposite perspective is the best way that you can gauge yourself. So like, for instance, I just watched this just completely offensive guy to my standards, meaning he's just nothing I would look for in a man. Not because he's very handsome. He's probably, he's financially targeting his life in a very respectable way. It does look like he's trying to do some self-work, right? But he is basing everything on these very shallow, materialistic, and earthbound necessities. And all he's attracting is these like shallow, materialistic, and narcissistic women. And then he's categorizing as all women are these things in that category of all. Well, I mean, where are you at? So anytime you're attracting anybody or any situation or anything into your life, you need to assume some responsibility in what is being attracted to you. So like, if you don't like that what's being attracted to you is, unstable situations, then you have to look at your stability. You have to look at where you are unstable, and you have to stabilize those areas. If you are, in a financial crisis, then you need to make some different career moves, or you need to learn about how to better invest your money, or you need to educate yourself and become very responsible with your money. Or if you are, trying to do some self-work, then what you really need to do is be very, very real and stop placing all the blame in the all category, and whatever that all category is in your life. I could easily place the blame right now on narcissistic men in my life causing all the pain in my life since birth, right? I had a narcissistic father, and I've been working out that particular area of those wounds, those deeply submerged unconscious wounds. And I finally figured it all out at the age of 47 going on 48. I didn't realize the way that I grew up had such a impact on all of my future decisions, right? I'm so little, and then I was just on that journey of learning life's lesson in that particular area of my life. And it took until 47, 48 for me to figure it out. Does that make me undesirable? Yeah, kinda, because I'm sure that the guys that were in my life didn't really appreciate being a part of my lesson. But understand that the people that I was attracting into my life were part of my journey, and so because that stuff was in me, I attracted it. So like, to assume that it is everybody else or a particular like, for instance, I could easily label all of my struggles as it's all men, right? All men are narcissistic, all men are abusive, all men are narcissists. But I can't wrap my head around that concept of all. There are times in your life where you will, to survive your situation and to try to understand and perceive your situation properly, you're going to probably go through a time period in your life where you put people in the all category, because your brain is trying to make sense of the fact that there is a particular part of your life where there is a cumulative lesson, and so the word all comes into mind. But it's a dangerous label. It's like saying all black people will break the law. It's like saying all women who produce YouTube videos where they do makeup tutorials are ignorant and shallow. It's like saying all white people that grow up in the country are racist and conservative. It's like saying that all drug addicts are bad. You know, like the word all is such a toxic and disgusting word, and it forms racism. It makes people into bigots. It forms the ugliest part of our society, and it's just a repulsive word for me personally, and I find it completely offensive. I usually never comment on a video, but this guy's video was so it generalized women in this all category, and he was just discussing with all of these men about this all category, and I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I don't actually match any of those categories, and I'm a woman, and I'm not like some exceptional woman. Like, there are lots of women out there like me, and I don't deserve some special classification because I'm like the 1%, right? It's like, no, there are a lot of people that go through phases in their lives where at times they can fall into categories, but at times you have the power and the ability at all times to take yourself out of categories, to take yourself out of the word all, you know, where people try for comfort zones to put you in a category because they can't deal with the fact that that perhaps their decision making, or perhaps what they're attracting into their life, does not have some deeply internal responsibility. This sounds so crazy deep, but it is true. When we're in this part in our lives where Chiron drops into Aries, and then Mercury is going to move forward in Aries, and we're going to start processing all of this Aries work. We've got Jupiter in Scorpio in retrograde, and we've got Uranus still in Aries. What we're starting to build toward as the sun drops into Taurus, and I think Uranus is going to move in May, is going to move into Taurus. One of the things that you guys are going to start to notice is that to be labeled, to be classified in an all category, you're unique. And what is very unique about you is the value that you have to bring to the table, right? What is valuable about you, just you. So nobody's in an all category. Yes, as a human, as a species, we're a human being. But I don't want to be categorized in the human being or a Homo sapien category. You know, I don't want to be categorized in anything. I'm unique, I'm different, I have something specific to bring to the table. I am in my own way, I'm responsible for myself. I have control over my responses to things, my reactions to things, and I have the ability to change direction anytime I want to. And there are limitations in your sense of self that where it can be easy to classify yourself. Say you're a paraplegic and you're in a chair, it could be easy for you to classify yourself as a paraplegic, and therefore you have this set of limitations. Okay, I don't mind that category as long as you don't define yourself by that category. Okay, so as long as you are not sitting there thinking that because you are a paraplegic, these are your limitations. I watch people every day with limitations that honestly do life better and seem to understand things. Sorry, I had to reposition myself. Understand things a lot better than people who have no limitations and have every advantage in the world. So you don't get to fall into an all category because you have a limitation either. Because you're autistic, because you have cancer. I'm not saying that these classifications out there don't exist for a specific purpose, as long as they're a way to empower yourself. So let's say, like for instance, right now, as I'm going to be I'm moving my entire life. I am going in a span of time where I'm unemployed. So I'm classified as unemployed. Does that mean that I'm not valuable? No, I literally had a job offer in 2 days from posting my resume to the place that I wanted to seek. And so there's a time frame where I'm getting all my paperwork together. I'm going to transition to moving up there. I have to go through their onboarding process. So yes, technically right now I'm undesirable. I'm unemployed, right? But does that make me a person that doesn't have any value in this world? No. Just because you don't have, I guess I didn't feel like I explained myself properly. When I was talking about going to school and getting a PhD, that is an admirable quality. I admire people with dedication and determination to achieve goals. That is sexy crap to me. Nobody has more admiration for a degree than I do. But does that give you a classification? Does that put you in a hierarchy system that puts you above me? No, it does not. It does not, because I don't have a PhD. No. Because I've known people who are very smart with PhDs or have advanced degrees, master's degrees or bachelor's degrees, who I consider some of the most ignorant, socially ignorant people I've ever met, because they have the capacity to work at such a high level, they can't simplify their minds sometimes. Does that mean that I think all people with a PhD are snobs and use the word all doctors are rude and mean and have a God complex, or all lawyers are slimy? And now, granted, we fall into categories because the reasons that categories exist and labels exist and the word all exists is because our brain needs to make sense out of things that don't make sense. And so what it likes to do is to categorize and organize things into little boxes so that it can keep you away from pain and make you go toward pleasure. On our mind's most simplistic level, categories exist. And so that's the key word that we want to tap into when we're talking about labeling and categorizing and identifying people and then putting them in these specific boxes, I guess, is because that is simplistic. And wow, we're trying to become aware. We're awakened to the possibilities of us as human beings and us on an individualistic level to make a impact in this world. And the first way that we have to do that, if you strip everything back on its most simplistic level, is to develop the most complete and true self in its entirety. So if we're weak in a specific area, we have to identify that area in our lives, but then we have to take that area in our lives and we have to use it to its maximum capacity. We have to develop that area, and we can't use it as a limitation. We don't get to fall back on that victim mentality of, I grew up on the streets of Brooklyn, and there's nothing out there that can help me out of my situation, so I'm going to go into drugs and alcohol and have that be part of what I identify with, because that's all that I see, that's all that's available. Those are the only assets around me to help me identify with. So I see it so much, I just tend to want to be it type mentality. But there are amazing assets out there. There's amazing resources out there for people who are inner city children that, and I'm not saying that I know the plight of being an inner city child. I grew up on a farm, for crying out loud. So I am not going to sit here and claim to identify with your struggle, because that would be so disgusting on my part, to try to understand what it would be like to go into the world at such a young age and be exposed to so much and have so many inner city dynamics form who I am, and be able to elevate myself out of that mindset and think, well, I don't identify with that at all when it helped form you from a kid. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the roots of that tree in the video that I was talking about when I was talking about Chiron and Aries, the reason I want you to understand, we're all genetically predisposed to identify with something. We are, you know, we're in a certain place in our lives, we're in a certain time in our lives, we're a certain age, we're a certain gender. We're identifying ourselves as a genderless role, I guess, is out there too. And we have to figure out how we fit in, and how it's so strange, because at a time that's challenging us to stand out and to identify ourselves as an individual and to empower our individualistic gifts, right? Those, you know, something that we just specifically have and only we specifically have. At the same time that we're doing that, the world is hell-bent on slamming us into categories and roles and genders and labeling us. And we're trying to struggle to break free from these particular dynamics. And so, like, I had a conversation with my daughter. Some of you may appreciate this, some of you don't. If it's offensive, I apologize. It's not meant to be. But I just have I'm old, so like it's very hard for me to understand some of the gender issues that kids are having nowadays. Because when I grew up, I was a girl. I just identified myself as a girl, right? And I liked boys. So I was a classic heterosexual girl, right? It never occurred to me when I met somebody to identify myself as a girl. You know, you just looked at me and knew I was a girl, like I was super girly, even though I was like a tomboy and was out like on a farm raising my own food and just doing things that I never saw any of the other little girls do. You knew, because I wore dresses and my hair was always long and I just looked a certain way. And boys reacted to me a certain way. They just could just tell I was a girl. So like what's super hard today is that I find that so many people classify themselves in their gender role, meaning if they're pan, if they're bisexual, if they're homosexual, if they're heterosexual, if they're straight. I mean, I don't know what labels everybody puts on things, because I'm so not a label person. But it is very important that people are defining those, even their gender roles nowadays. And so my daughter and I had this crazy deep conversation about the youth of today, and the fact that when you meet them, their sexuality is discussed publicly, like on social media, and I don't get it. Like, I'm like, what does it matter if they like men, women, if couples swap? I don't care what their personal sexuality is. That is none of my business. I'm not watching a YouTube channel to discuss your sexuality. I'm watching a YouTube channel because you have a gift, and your creative development of your channel does it for me. And I subscribe to your channel because you inspire me in some way. I don't care about how old you are. I don't care if you're old. I don't care if you're a teenager. If you have an energy, if you have a gift, if you have something that I relish, then I'm going to subscribe to you and I'll watch you, and you'll help form some of my mindsets, and I'm very blessed for that. But I've never thought about it as like, you have to get up on your channel and discuss your sexuality with me because it's in question. What the hell? And so we had this really amazing conversation, and it really tied into what I feel like we're going through right now, which was the struggle to break free from gender roles, from identifying yourself as, so like the word that I hate more than anything, even though I've even used it, is pussy. Like, to me that means weakness. But if you really look at it, my daughter said, she pointed out something that was like so crazy insightful and so elevated in her thinking that she's made me like think that word should just be abolished from my language, which it should, because pussycat is cute, but like, people are, you know, makes me such a pussy, meaning that female, because they have that particular attribute, is weaker. It's a weakness. It identifies a gender as a weakness, and I didn't realize the magnitude of that word. Okay. Or like, I didn't realize masculine and feminine energy had such a connotation. I think that's the word. And so basically, like, I am a very masculine woman, and so I always talk to my daughter about that. I feel very masculine. Even though if you guys have ever watched me before, when I used to just sit on and have the camera view me, you can tell I'm just crazy feminine. And there are times in my life where I get to be feminine, usually when I'm in a relationship. But like, for the most part, I approach the world on a very masculine mindset. So like, I very much identify at times with being feminine and very much at times masculine. And that but I also admire the fact that I embrace both sides of my human experience. So I want to embrace masculine energy and feminine energy because they both do different things, and I think it's good to use both. So if a man can't be encouraged to develop his feminine qualities, because I guess that makes him a pussy, and if he cries, I guess that makes him a pussy. No, it just makes him freaking human. Now, if he's just crying at the drop of a hat over everything, that's a whole different story. Then he's just got probably some mental sensitivities, and then people need to probably help him identify those, and then, you know, he can help work through those. But for the most part, like, I can see why can't men be in touch with their feminine side? Why can't men embrace their masculinity if they're a feminine man? Like, why do we have to put people in a category, label that as all, and then stuff them and force them to conform? That is the crap we're dealing with right now. That is why I became so passionate. That is why I feel like this video is going to be so substantial. It's a work of art to me, is because this needs to be out there on the internet. This needs to be talked about. You know, this stuff needs to be talked about. Astrology is wonderful, but understanding the depth of astrology is where I just get lost in. It really engulfs my thoughts, and I sit there and I think about, you know, the reason I was watching this guy's channel is because I wanted the male perspective on females. I wanted to know everything from their side. Like, what is it like to be in a relationship with a woman? So yeah, I didn't ever like what he said, but some of it was super valuable. And some of it I used to change my life and go forward with my dreams and my wants and my ambitions. And so, as deeply disgusting and irritating as it is to listen to such an opposite opinion from what you identify with, it helps you meet in the middle. So it helps you also understand where you are at in the pendulum process. Are you in one extreme? Are you in the other? So if you are labeling everybody as all, you are on the negative extreme of that thought process. You know, when you evolve, you're in the middle. You consider both positive and negative, and you come to a conclusion, and it's a balanced perspective. When you are labeling anything as all, then you are off the mark. Guys, you're off the mark, because it is such a limiting thought process to believe that people are in the all category. Should be or never. Here's another one. Never. It's like, I don't know, because there's a lot of things I thought I would never do that I did, and there's a lot of things that I thought I would never encounter that I did. So like, these words, be careful of your words, and I know that it's easy to use them improperly, and I do, and I would love to be like better at grammar and better at using my words and my vocabulary to expand, and I work on that all the time, because I feel like words are so important. They're like one of the most important things that we do. Stuff that comes out of our mouth is so incredibly important for us to filter and for us to understand the magnitude of simple words, of simple. And when we're communicating, are we in a high vibration? Are we in a low vibration in our thoughts? Or are we in a undeveloped perspective? Or has that particular perspective that you're communicating about been fully processed, researched, analyzed? Or are you just developing an opinion because you found a couple like people that back you up, right? They feed your current perspective, but what you always want to do is you always want to expand your perspective and make it as broad and as big as possible, because then you don't have these limiting mindsets of conservative Republicans, you know, just very liberal Democrats. Like, everything, we want to be somewhere in the middle and balanced in our thought processes at all times. And that's what we should be striving for on an individualistic level, because, as I said, lead by example, cumulatively, with enough like mindsets, when people are out there researching this stuff, what can click is the balanced perspective, not the extreme perspective. Super deep. But I was just really worked up, and I had to vent, and I had to get it out, and I had to talk. And it just spoke to me about April. And so I'll just stick it with the April stuff, because I just don't know how to even classify this video, because it's technically about astrology, but not. Anyhow, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.